SoFi is in a massive technical area, guys. We have seen the ascending trend line continue to bring price action higher and higher and higher, come each and every day. But now, as of now, guys, we've seen stock price revert out of that, enter a bullish consolidation, since then gapping up, hitting our $25 price target from earnings, and then a lot of volatility each way. It does appear now, being that we do have a little bit of a dip and a gap reversion to fill that's not too far away, we could be seeing a lot of upper price action levels to come soon, guys. That being said, my name is Dylan from Dylan's Trade. We're going to break straight into this technical analysis breakdown. First, going over to the weekly to get a broad bird eye perspective on the weekly analysis, guys. Many stocks enter a IPO range high, right? They enter a range highs, which are very good levels to target within the long term. And so SoFi doesn't have any resistance besides these IPO range highs at this $25 level. We have set that $25 price target, guys, when we did break out of this handle at 1440 with the 1850 level, and then over that 1840, over that 1840, these blow off top over here. There was nothing until these IPO range highs. The stock price has never been this high. So this was the only spot to target, and we have hit that as we suspected, but getting that extra final push from earnings. Notice how stock price gets a massive rise up quickly due to news, but then technical analysis once again steps in from the exact high, about 11 cents over, kind of false breaking above that for 5 minutes or so. But you guys get the image, man. You know, we exactly topped out at that level. So as of now, this doesn't mean that the party is over, because we're seeing a lot of good news, a lot of good volatility, and we're seeing that intense volume pressure step up. This is the biggest bar of volume that SoFi has had in the last 3 years. So we're looking at a really intense week on SoFi, and they're kind of going to dip, you know, still above the tops of these, really being at 2204 level, guys. This is the one we've been noting for quite some time, just being that we've had multiple touch points at this level. Stock price stops after this parabolic surges. There's a wick right here. This is a consolidation. The close was right at that level, right? We've seen the open of this body candle over here at that level. And now we're seeing a massive uptick, but we're still trading above that little area right there. So there isn't a lot of data to go off within these quick parabolic surges, but we're still hanging above this one. So technically we're still in contention, you know, come Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, have this be a little bit more filled out and get closer in between this $25 resistance marker and this level between these two right here. Kind of get in the middle. So just off that theory and that gauge, you know, it would make sense to see a little bit of uptick come soon. But it looks good here, guys. You know, we're still seeing that rejection offer price target, which is never a good sign to see stock price, you know, get to this, say it's $100, whatever, a big level. Stock price exactly gets to that level, it gets a hair above it, and then it just, you know, crashes. You know, it's not always good to see that, but it doesn't mean that stock price can't build before retesting it and then getting the breakout, maybe another retest, right? So there's a lot of different situations that can occur. But as of now, the trend's your friend, guys. We're seeing intense volume. We're still above these, you know, $22 ranges, which looks good from a short-term perspective. So I'm still bullish on the weekly perspective. I still think we have more price action to go up higher. With that being said, guys, we're now on the daily. Each one of these candlesticks representing 1 day of price action. And there's a very interesting story being told on SoFi. So if we pull up our indications, our data points. So first and foremost, guys, that, you know, 2134 level is key. We really see the influence at this level. So there is that support as well. If we do get below this 2204, which note how this lines up with this gap fill, right? Stock price consolidates, gets very tight. We're building energy for the next movement, which we thought this was in a flag out. Again, it's $25. We're not gapping up, touching that, but you know, we left that gap right here at this level. Stock price gaps up, massive movement down, and then it ends really weak. So in these big gap ups where stock price opens up at, you know, 20, it closes at 21, 20, you know, $20, something like that. And then it goes as high as 25, and then it reverts back down to a low of day around that 22.30 level. The sellers have dominated that session. Typically will come down to go fill that gap. So stock price took the fast track. We gapped down a little bit, filled that, went a little bit lower than that level, and then immediately skyrocketed up, right? Skyrocketed up. Next day we had a nice gap. We attempted to gap and go today, ended up failing. So the same, you know, concept applies. So it would make sense to come down and go fill this gap at this level. But luckily for the bulls, that's at that $22 level, that 2206 level, that rough region, which coincides with this support, guys. So that $22 region is a pretty double back support. And there's only, you know, 50 cents price to go lower. So this is a spot where you should expecting that gap fill reversion to set in. Sometimes you see stock price just like over here, go a little bit below it. This time a little bit more significantly than others. We went about 3.7% lower than this gap, and then we spiked up. But within the short-term volatility, right, we're still getting a lot of nice buying pressure. There's a nice reaction to earnings. We're still in a bullish trajectory. So when you see these swings up, swings down, they're filling the gaps, right? We have a gap and we filled. Stock price is right here. So stock right here. We have a gap to fill at this level right here, right? So it would make sense we come down to this level, we fill it, and then we go back up. Yeah? Within these quick swings up, down. We're typically going to end up at least retesting these highs. So I think we see a revisit within at least today's high, come on the next few days within that 2387 level. So I think there's another chance to, retest these levels and probably officially get the breakout. These are the weird situations where you can see a 1, 2, 3 gap fill, 4, spike. There's a lot of different situations, guys, but I still think it looks good for the bulls. Yes, we're seeing another inverted hammer candle potentially going to fill the gap, but this gap is only 50 cents lower, and we're still once again within this momentum theory, a lot more room to the upside, hanging above some critical levels, guys. Very volatile stuff from SoFi, but overall it is net bullish. So the data looks good as well, likely to go fill that gap. On the hourly analysis, we get a great perspective of this gap fill, right? Of this gap fill. We exactly came down to fill this gap down at this level, pushed below that for about 20 minutes on the hourly, and then spiked up aggressively. And we hung below this 2204 level, which is now the gap fill now, which is a pretty critical level, and we held against that level tight, guys. I mean, really, really tight. So we're seeing a lot of respect on these levels, despite seeing some very herky-jerky activity. We perfectly come to fill the gap. We run up and down. So I do think, once again, this makes sense looking at the hourly. We do bounce on that 2204 region. But outside of that, guys, not really much to take away from the hourly. We could be looking at potentially some sort of a pennant to fill out, which would give us a very high confidence yield setup. Say we bounce around, we bounce here, we bounce around, get a breakout. This is something that can happen, guys. It wouldn't shock me. I mean, we've seen SoFi do this a couple times, and it's given us good upside. But as of now, that is just hypothetical, but a very live situation. So overall, on the hourly, once again, not much to take away, but it is net bullish. So centering back to the daily, guys, we look good here. Going to fill the gap, probably bouncing at the support, and then revisiting this $25 high or this high of today around that 2389 level, that rough region around there. And on the weekly, guys, once again, we're still holding above this little consolidation phase, kind of a break and a retest. So we should make sense, once again, get the bounce. As long as we hold above these levels, we got some pretty strong support, being that 2134 level and 2204. Those rough regions, guys, keep an eye on that. And center it over to the hourly. Once again, potential pennant forming, but as of now, it does appear, a little bit lower until a bounce. And yeah, guys, so overall, SoFi is very, very volatile. We have their $25 price target exactly, which we did set on the channel. Congrats to anyone who has caught that. Was a very obvious spot to sell, but if you're still in the stock, once again, hindsight's 2020. I still think we look good. I know we have a lot of investors here which don't care about these micro movements as much. From the long term, things still look good. Centered over to the monthly, we've seen the breakout, which we suspected. There is definitely an argument, guys, that we do break over these IPO range highs. And if we do that, we'll be immediately pushing all-time high, 28, 26. And then from there, if we break out, we could get parabolic. I mean, the setup looks good from a long-term perspective, but within the short term, looks good as well. We just have to see the buyers revert and bounce at this gap fill zone. So with that being said, guys, have a good day. Take care, trade smart, and peace.